Welcome to our September You Ask Me Train. This is all focused on finance, as you can see. So I wanted to introduce Gen 6. She is going to be leading this You Ask Me Train, and she is a software training consultant here at ConnectWise. Just so everyone knows, you guys were all able to submit questions during the registration process for this. And we actually had quite a bit of questions come in, but this is completely interactive. So feel free to unmute yourself. You can turn your camera on or off. That's totally fine. But ask questions coming off mute in the chat as we're going along. I think we had about 5 or 6 questions submitted ahead of time. And then after we get through those, Jen will start taking any other questions that come in. So feel free to unmute, and Jen, take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Lisa, and welcome to our finance yacht. As Lisa mentioned, we did get quite a few questions already, so I have prepared answers to those. So if you did ask any questions, I will go through those. They were really good questions, so I want to make sure that we do address those, and they are all finance themed, but if you have any questions outside of that, I will do my very best to answer those as well. And definitely feel free to unmute, want to be as collaborative as possible. But just in general, I will go through those previously received questions. Then we'll open it up. Any questions you've got, and then I have a helpful tips and tricks um, bullet point, but I didn't actually prepare any. So hopefully the questions and the answers are the tips and tricks you're looking for. And if we come up with anything along the way, there might be some sprinkled throughout. But we did get a question from Amanda. I'm not sure if you're here, Amanda, about GL setup, just being unsure of what needs to be configured to implement a new vertical or product. And I love talking about GL setup. I actually, before rejoining ConnectWise in June of this year, I worked here previously, but before rejoining, I was doing a lot of GL specific consulting. So if you do have any more questions about this, definitely feel free to ask. But really, to jump into anything new you're looking to offer, one of the first things is just understanding your chart of account setup and your financial reporting needs in your accounting package. So that might be a conversation to have with your accountant, or if you are the accountant, just really thinking through what that chart of accounts needs to look like, and then we can go back into ConnectWise Manage and make sure we support what you've configured in that chart of accounts. But a big part of that is also understanding the hierarchy of your GL mappings, really understanding the different account types that are available for you to map your different revenue and different expenses by, and then understanding the levels underneath each of those account types. So typically when we talk about GL mapping, it is one of the more complicated setups and more complicated setup tables in the system. So I did want to call out this GL matrix that we have on the university as a resource. Even if you are pretty familiar with that setup table, if you ever have to delegate any responsibilities to it, I would strongly suggest you check this general ledger accounts matrix out on the university. It's really, really helpful in identifying the different account types. You can see in this first drop down, you're able to go ahead and choose the account type, and this matrix will give you the details about what that particular account type is for. And then you can see in the tables and the records available. And the records, of course, are dummy data in the matrix because that is all reliant on your actual ConnectWise Manage configuration. But you can get a really good idea of how you can break labor revenue out, how you can break agreement revenue out, product revenue out. Um, and then we can build that into the GL account setup table so that it is talking to the right accounts in your chart of accounts. But I did want to just throw in one more slide about that topic. When you are implementing something new, you do want to make sure that the categorization inside ConnectWise Manage is configured properly. So depending on what you're implementing, if that is a new department, a new line of business in your organization, we want to make sure the company structure and your groups or departments inside that My Company setup are defined properly and then linked to the right thing. So if it is a new department or line of business that you've got service boards in that location department, your agreements are being properly configured, and then we can take advantage of that to ensure that it's going into the right place. Or we can get more specific if it is a new product that you're selling, if it doesn't fall into an existing category or subcategory, that you get those defined. Types of agreements, if that needs to be defined, and then if it's labors, a new labor offering, something like that, that we need to break down by work role, work type. We just want to make sure that we have the managed configuration in place to support what we're looking to do. And then you would simply just add in those GL mappings to support that setup. Um, and then an important takeaway from that is that ConnectWise Manage does always associate the most specific mapping it can find, meaning if you sell a product and it is in the hardware category and you have the hardware category and products mapped at some higher level, it will use that category hardware mapping to say, okay, I go into hardware income as opposed to climbing up the ladder. But that's how I like to think of it. It just climbs up a ladder till it finds one it can fall into, and it uses the first one it can find. So hopefully that helps answer that. It's really a lot of just planning and then making sure the setup is in place inside Manage to support that. Did anyone have any GL questions while we're here? I like making silences super awkward. Okay, cool. We will move right along. We had a question about how can Manage help us to keep track of cost of goods sold in our accounting software without manual data entry. So this is a really good question, and it does somewhat depend on the accounting package you're using. Some of the flow will be a little different. I built out my answer around QuickBooks Desktop. But if you're using something else, Susan, I think you're here and you asked this question. So if you're using something else, if you just want to let me know. Um, but really, to track your cost of goods sold inside your accounting package, it all really heavily relies on that procurement module and being sure that we are syncing the PO records into item receipts inside of QuickBooks, and ensuring proper product setup. So if you have inventory parts inside of ConnectWise Manage, we do want to make sure that they are set up with the inventory class and the inventory type. ConnectWise Manage will let you mismatch those, and I've heard some business cases where it maybe makes sense to do that. But really, if that product is inventory and we do want to show it in our inventory valuation reports inside Manage, and we also want to ensure that it is getting reported as an asset before it's sold inside our accounting package, we want to make sure those align. In case you're not sure why they're two different fields, class is the one that controls ConnectWise Manage and how that product will move through the system. Type is specifically for the accounting integration to ensure we are creating those products properly. But once we have that inventory product defined correctly inside of our product catalog, the flow would go as such. That product, when there is a need for it, will get received on a purchase order. It is important when that product gets received that the cost is correct. As soon as it's received, that cost field locks down. So we want to make sure that the cost goes in properly. And then when that PO is meeting sync criteria, we can go ahead and link that over into our accounting package. The value of that product will sit in the asset account. And then once that inventory product is invoiced, we'll see that when the invoice is synced, that asset amount is relieved from the asset account and we impact our cost of goods sold account. So this is still looking at the GL mappings inside of ConnectWise Manage to ensure we are linking that product up properly to the right asset account, revenue account, and COGS account. But that flow, as long as that product has the cost associated to it, will ensure that we are posting over that cost of goods sold with those inventory sales. If it is oh, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was going to ask on uh, the inventory part is working great for us. I'm
Mhm.
I'm really happy with the way it runs through the inventory account and then down through cost of goods sold.
Perfect.
We're matching up everything to our invoices. That's working, to ensure, so we're ensuring that we're recording shipping costs and courier fees and all those things. My concern is COGS accounting for lab tech agents and ESET and CCleaner and all these other things. We get a bill from ConnectWise alone that can be spread across 88 clients and times 5 for 5 different products. And I didn't know if there was a way to run that through, like syncing it through Automate into Manage and then into the agreement, into the accounting software.
For those costs, not really. If you were to create a PO, if those are like non-inventory type parts, in ConnectWise Manage, you could follow this flow to just post all those costs over in kind of one fell swoop, um, as long as you just run it through the PO. So if it's a non-inventory part, as soon as that is synced over, it will hit COGS at that point. It doesn't have to go through that whole invoicing um, part, but without those being like inventory class inventory type parts, the invoice part would never have it impact COGS.
Okay.
But
So
this piece, yep,
procurement then is the only allocation that we really have an option for in
yes,
Manage.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So if it is a non-inventory type part inside of QuickBooks, and you would like to see as soon as that PO runs through it hit cost of goods sold, the part just has to have this checkbox selected, and that's what enables that bottom half of the screen to allow you to say what expense account that product should post to when it syncs through.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, that's a good question. And I'm assuming, are you using QuickBooks Desktop?
Yes, we are.
Okay, cool. I'm glad I assumed that, which sometimes gets me in trouble, but that worked out well. Um, yeah, but really good question. There's not a great way to run it through Manage unless you do it through that PO. But we did get another question from William regarding block time agreements. So, how to properly set up and renew non recurring block time agreements to cover specific labor types, and how to keep those labor types from accidentally billing out. So, there's a couple pieces to that. If it is a one time agreement, you can actually just go ahead and renew it through the use of an additional addition. So your agreement will be set up to bill just the one time in the agreement tab. And then when that runs out and your customer says, hey, I want to purchase 20 more hours, you can come in with a product that you call block of hours or whatever naming convention works. Add that in as an addition with an effective date of when that should go out on an invoice. And that's all you have to do to drive the billing. And then you would just add in an adjustment to that agreement for the amount of hours that they're purchasing effective on the date that those are purchased. You can, as you see there, include some notes. So if you do want to run back and ever review why you did that, that will show up if you come into the adjustments tab or in the reconciliation report of the agreement. So this top screenshot, that's just that secondary edition of when you're trying to renew it, running through the invoicing queue. And then your agreement recon report will show the same kind of information based on that adjustment you made. So you'll be able to see those additional 20 hours come into play on the appropriate date. There's really extensive documentation about how to do this on our university as well. So just search renew one time block agreement and that doc will come up. But really, it is all just driven through an addition and an adjustment. And then you would just use the agreement as normal. But to ensure that it's covering the right amounts, the right kinds of work, you'll want to go into that first tab on the agreement tab, And there's going to be a setup in here for you to say work roles and work types that should and should not be covered. So anything that needs to be included in this agreement, we want to make sure is in the covered side, and anything that you do want to bill hourly or whatever the rates are for, you want to make sure are not covered. And also keeping in mind on a time entry, you have both of these, a work role and a work type. So if either of those are not covered, it will not be covered by the agreement and try to bill. So the combination for it to be covered has to be both. And then lastly, to make sure this is just happening, um, you can default the agreement. So there's another pod on that agreement called default for new records. And we can tell ConnectWise Manage, hey, when the customer puts in a ticket on my help desk board, I want this to automatically be associated. We would just set that criteria and ensure that we have the default checkbox selected. And you would see moving forward from that point, this agreement automatically applied to tickets in the help desk department on the help desk board. So it's a combination really of those two things, your defaults, your work role, work types, making sure the right type of work is covered. And you can always check out this time tab of the agreement to get a really full view of all the time that's been associated to the agreement, and then understand if it was actually applied to the agreement. So in your agreement time tab, there's a bill hours column and an app hours column. App is applied hours. So when you see them match up like that, it means the entire time entry was covered. If it is a partial amount or a zero, um, part of that time entry or the entire time entry was not covered. So you can see here, this no charge was not covered. And if you're ever looking at this and you're not sure why something wasn't covered, this enhancement is one of my favorites. There's an app hours info column, and you can click that information button and it'll actually tell you why this time entry is not covered. So anything with an X is something to check out. And if you realize like, oh, that work role should be covered, you can always move it back over into that covered column and update this. But this will give you really good insight into what is covered, what is not. So if something ever does move through to the invoicing queue that you are not expecting, you can always check that out. The next question was from Eric. I don't think we have Eric here. But the question was, how can I easily make the work description column on an invoice wider? I have an answer. I don't know that it is necessarily an easy way to do that. Um, the in, the invoice templates included in the invoice template setup table are pretty rigid in the full formatting of how things are laid out, but you are able to do custom invoice templates. And in those, you are able to really get very custom, as the name suggests, with how that invoice template will lay out. So that is the option if you really do need to make graphical changes to how that invoice is going to be laid out. So I will share this link in the chat for anyone who is interested, but you can update your invoice templates to be a custom one. We have the documentation to do it. And if you're anything like me and not an HTML report writer wizard, there are standard forms out there to give you a jump start in that. So in the system module in your report writer, if you go into that category standard forms, if you use that little menu button to the left, it'll expand. So you've got finance, and then there are a bunch of these standard ones in there. You can click in to edit those. And in the design form button of the fields tab is where you can get into the HTML code and really start to build this out. But there's good documentation on this too, that link that I'll share, that has the details of how to very quickly get to the areas to update the logo and things. If you like the way it's laid out, it could be a good starting point to just go ahead and get those updated. And then I included a screenshot of HTML. So the last question that I had from the previously received questions is, what is the status of merging all desktop functionality into the web? It is definitely on our product team's radar, but I don't have an actual date to give you. There is a table out on the university that gives what is available versus what's not between the internet client and the browser version. So there are a few things that are not out there, one being the accounting package direct transfer. So we're definitely letting the team know that that came up. They know that that is a thing. So we'll definitely keep everyone posted on that. But that was all the questions that I had previously received. So if anybody has any other burning questions that they would like to have addressed, now would be the time. Yes,
I have
go
a
ahead,
question.
Susan. Yeah.
Is there a way to lock down the billable field in a time entry
I
so that a
don't,
technician cannot make it a non-billable or non-chargeable ticket or time entry?
let's have, I don't think so off the top of my head, but we can absolutely take a look. Well, it looks like yes. That might be
Under
new
service
because I don't remember seeing that one here. So under time and expense, time entry billable option. That's of course not in. See if we can find that.
So you need to go through all the security roles and select it or not select it.
Yes, and it would be the edit one. So if it's kind of like every other security role in here, but if you set it to none, they won't be able to change it anywhere. My just their own.
Okay.
Very good question. I'm excited we discovered that together here.
Awesome.
Very good. That's another cool resource too for security role updates because sometimes it's hard to tell exactly what something will impact. So another matrix out here is that security roles matrix, just to have on your radar.
I'm sorry, where do you find that? In the university?
Yeah, there's actually, if you go under the education tab, there's a matrices screen.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's a few different ones for the different products, but that security roles one I find to be extremely helpful. That's where that GL one lives too.
Great.
Excellent.
I don't want to be the only one. I don't want to monopolize this, but I do have another question
Yeah, sure.
on that. You talked about having a block of hours agreement, and it reminded me, we actually have some clients that we have 2 or 3 different agreements on. We'll have like a monthly recurring agreement, we'll have an annual recurring agreement, and maybe even an on-site block of hours agreement. How at billing time, I end up having to go into time entries and reclassify the agreement that's being selected because they're all specific, they're all applicable to the same help desk board.
Mm.
So if I'm wondering what's the best way, I guess for the monthly, for the block of hours, we could create a ticket that stays open for all block of hour time and all time gets posted to that and the agreement's attached to that ticket. But I'm not sure how to really properly address the selection of a monthly versus a quarterly or annual agreement.
Yeah, that's a tricky one. So you said they're all going to the same service board.
Right.
Hmm.
It's great to have all these options, but
Yeah.
the practical use of it is kind of
Difficult.
yeah.
Let me jot that one down. I don't have a solution off the top of my head. If anyone else does in the room, feel free to share, but let me jot that down and I'll see if we can't.
Because what I get worried about is,
Anyway.
I can fix the tickets that I see, But if they get covered by an agreement because the work role is covered,
Right.
and the wrong agreement's attached, then I don't see those or have an opportunity to correct them. They don't show up on the invoicing screen.
Right. I gotcha. Is there any difference on like the configurations that would be on those tickets based on the agreement, or does that all kind of get mixed together too?
Well, basically the only time, there's very few annual agreements that we have. Almost everything is monthly, and 99% of our tickets should apply to that monthly, but we'll have an annual agreement because that's how the vendor is billing us. And so that's how we're passing through the cost to the customer.
Gotcha.
And so it's really a very limited agreement. Maybe what I do is create a board just for annual agreements. And
If you could, yeah, it would help separate it and make sure that default piece works on your different agreements. Um, I can't think of anything else that would assist in at least the automation of getting the right agreement on there, besides having that different board.
but I'm still, I guess I just have to look at it. I'm thinking if you select the agreement, I'll have to look at it more. Can you select the primary agreement for the customer on the customer level?
You can do it at the configuration level.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why it'll do like, it doesn't necessarily automate it, but it puts an asterisk next to the agreement that covers the configuration on the ticket. So it makes it easier to pick the right one, but it's really only at that config level.
So that's at when we're onboarding clients or adding new product, we have to add that as a task for the technician to select the, okay.
Yep. But I have it jotted down. I will think that through to think if there's anything that we could potentially be missing there.
This is all helpful information. It's frustrating if you're not the person who was here at the implementation.
Yes, I get
It's
that.
really hard to find the information, and I mean, I don't have a lot of time to go through all the university stuff. I have done all of the training, but still to remember it all.
Yeah, it's a lot. I know.
Okay.
Any other questions?
That's all I've got.
Cool. Well, while everyone else thinks of any questions they might have, one thing I did want to just let you guys know about is our IT Nation Certify program. Our team has worked really hard at revamping the way this content is delivered, the content that is delivered, um, and really making it role based instead of like become ConnectWise Managed Certified and learn every module. So now it's focused on finance, it's focused on sales and marketing, it's focused on service delivery. And we've also revamped the Automate Expert and Professional certifications as well. And the Cell Cert is in its pilot phase right now. So if anyone is interested in participating or having anyone on their team participate, if you can email me, it's jsix@connectwise.com, J6. Um, I will hook you up with a free certification. The only qualification around that is if you could be so kind, or whoever in your organization takes it, to give us some feedback just on the content, on the delivery, just to make sure we are, providing what you would expect and what you feel like you need to learn. Um, so email me. There's 3 different things here, but it usually goes for $325. We'll hook it up for free, and it does come with a free retake as well. So, and a free live Q&A. Yeah, email me. We'll hook it up. And I think that's all I really had. We do have IT Nation Connect coming up. I hope you guys are considering coming, or already registered, or coming virtually. We're all very excited for that upcoming event. I know I'm excited to actually see people in the real life. It's going to be great. But definitely check that out too.
Is anyone on here signed up to go to Connect in person this fall? No, just me and Jen.
We'll be there. Super excited. We did have a meeting this morning about putting together one of our presentations, and I'm super excited about it. It's a day in the life of a service delivery manager. It's going to be groovy. Super jazzed about that. But yeah.
I know that, like, while we're still talking about Connect, I know that, for a lot of people, it is hard to travel. We hear from a lot of our partners that even if they want to travel, the company that they work for have restrictions. So I know it's not the same, but we do have a virtual option to attend Connect this year. I believe it's $129, but you get access to all the keynotes, to the Solutions Pavilion. I think like over 40 or 45 breakout sessions are going to be on there, and you can have the content for 90 days. I believe it's all downloadable, so you can share it with your peers. So not the same as in person, but there is still the option to attend virtually too.
Cool.
I like the virtual because I always feel like I'm trying to get the content from the presenters, and it's just automatic on virtual.
Yeah, that's true. Like the slide decks are like loaded on there, like ready to go for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the virtual is pretty cool, really. But see if... And you don't have to get on a plane, or if you're close,
or drive.
Yeah.
I wish they had stuff like this, best practices by area. I wish they would do a lot more of that at IT Nation. These tips and tricks, that would be amazing.
Yeah. We do have IT Nation Share, which does like travel around the world and goes to different cities and shares. It's all product training. So all we do is share the tips and tricks, best practices. We do hands-on labs there. We, of course, with COVID, did stop doing them in person, but we are going to be bringing them back next year. So we're going to have 9 in North America. We're going to do them in like March, April time, and then again in August and September. So we will have that, and hopefully we'll be coming to a city near you. All right. Any last minute questions? All right. Well, thank you all so much. Appreciate this. Hope this was valuable and you learned a lot. I know Jen gave out her email address. I'm sure, if you guys think of any questions, you can let her know. You can email usergroups@connectwise.com, and we hope to see you in person soon.
Yes. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.